webinar, and so if you have to leave early or if you want to send it to some of your colleagues who couldn't join, we'll have it up on our webinars page, which will link to our YouTube page later today. And if you have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to write them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So we'll be moderating questions throughout, and so we'll have kind of a break for questions after I present, and then we'll have another break for questions after our next presenters present. But if you have anything that you think of during, feel free to go ahead and use that chat box, and we'll get right to you. So today I'm so excited to have our guest speakers, Robert Brightfield, the Building Construction Technology Instructor for Dauphin County Technical School, and Sharon Dillings, the Instructional Coach, Math and Data Coach at the same school. They were a great 2018 award winner, and I'm so excited for you to hear from them in a few minutes. So, like I said, we're going to kind of walk through the application, talk about what we're looking for in a successful application. We know the application is very long and extensive, and so we want to make sure that you're kind of hitting on the key points that we're looking for, and then you'll hear from both Robert and Sharon, and then we'll open it up for questions. So first, a little bit about the criteria. I'll go through each of these and explain kind of what we're looking for. First, you will have to submit your program of study in one career cluster. We understand that of the 16 career clusters, we use the 16. Your state may use something different. You may use 17, you may use 15, but you'll have to select one. We know that there's some kind of overlap, especially between things like finance and business, or marketing and business. And so if you have any questions on kind of which career cluster you should be submitting in, feel free to reach out to us and we can kind of answer those for you, but you will have to select just one. Our second is that you're maintaining effective employer and business partnerships. So we want to really understand how you with your business employer kind of drive this program, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Third, demonstrating alignment to rigorous and relevant college and career-ready expectations. We want to make sure that those learners in your programs are really getting the academic and technical knowledge and skills that they need to succeed in both post-secondary education and their careers. Next, demonstrating a clear progression of knowledge and skills, and so I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Next is integrating successful career guidance and advisement. So how are you making sure that those learners in your programs of study understand the different pathways within that career cluster and within that program? Highlighting alignment to workforce and employer needs in the community. So does your program fill a skills gap in your community? If it does, and was it developed to fill that skills gap, that's a great story to tell. And then last, but probably most importantly, is what is the data to back this up? So we understand that the narrative is so important, but is there, you'll have to have some kind of concrete data to show that it's not just a narrative, there is some kind of background, supporting data to support that narrative. The timeline, we will have applications due November 21st, so in 20 days at 5 p.m. Eastern. They've been open for a couple weeks now, and so if you haven't started it, like I said, it's a gigantic application, so I'd encourage you to get it started as soon as possible. The selection committee, which is made up of state CTE directors, their staff, and past award winners, will review applications December through January. Then we have a call in January where we walk through all that applications and choose the winners. So it's not just our staff selecting the winners, it's really this kind of large group of state-level folks and local folks. And then you'll hear about whether or not your application was selected as the winner in January 2019. Then we will honor your program throughout the year, but specifically at an award ceremony at our spring meeting in Washington, D.C., which I'll talk about in a little bit. We did have a question about whether cosmetology would be in one of the career clusters. Yes, that would be in the human services career cluster, I believe. But for the person that wrote that, I'd be happy to kind of hop on a call or shoot them an email with more information about that career cluster specifically. So why should you apply? Well, first, we want to make sure that we're recognizing the great work of your students, of you, your faculty, your administrators, and your partners. And we want to showcase that program on the national stage. We do a lot of work throughout the year promoting award-winning programs all the way back from 2014 to now, and we do this through the media. Education Week is an outlet that we have a lot of contact with, and they're always looking for local programs to feature. So we just featured Traverse Bay, a 2014 and 2018 winner, in a couple of articles this year. So it's been a great way for us to really demonstrate national trends by featuring local programs, and this is the bank of programs that we often pull from. We also, you'll receive a 2-pager about your program, which we put on our website and that many programs put on their school website. We feature you in a monthly blog throughout the year, and we also feature you on our website and in a press release. And so you'll receive a lot of collateral if you're a winner that you can use in your own kind of marketing efforts and promotional efforts, but it's also a way for us to bring them to the Hill and show them to your congressman or congresswoman. So it's a great way to kind of get your name out there at the national level. Like I mentioned, you'll also be recognized at the Advance CTE spring meeting in Washington, D.C. We have about 250 to 300 state leaders that attend that meeting every year. We've also have the media and a ton of national partners, and so it's a way for really us to honor you all in person, and that's where you'll be able to bring a couple of representatives and then get your physical banner, which you'll receive. And that brings me to my next point. You'll receive kind of a large canvas banner that many schools showcase in their own school, and then a digital banner that you can use in whatever way you see fit. And like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a way for us to really show the rest of the people outside the CTE community how impressive CTE is, why it's a good option for students, and demonstrating kind of that case making around CTE in local programs. So, I first want to talk about data. This is a section that programs that are submitting typically have quite a bit of trouble with. I want to kind of just go through some changes to the data section this year. This is kind of early on in your application, I think on page 4 or 5. And so what we want to see is both secondary and post-secondary level data. Programs of study from both high school and post-secondary education are eligible to apply, but we really want to see that it is a true program of study and that it does span secondary and post-secondary, and that's why we have data sections for both. So ideally, if you have access to your post-secondary data if you're a K-12 school applying, or if you're a post-secondary school and you have access to your partnering schools, your sending schools to apply, then I would absolutely ask them for that data. At the very least, you need to have the data from your level, your program level. And we built out some new kind of data sections this year. And now at the kind of the first 4 or 5 you'll see in that light gray is better understanding what your whole school or your whole institution looks like. And so what are the total number of learners that you're serving as part of your school and all those subpopulations. Then you really get into the program piece. And so you may have a tiny program because that's the limitations you have. So even if you have a large school, you may have only a 20-person program. That's okay. We just really want to understand how this program fits into the rest of your school community. So you'll have to have that kind of higher level school data and then your kind of lower, more hyper-focused program data as well. And here we want to see kind of the subpopulations. I mean, we want to make sure that your program is serving underserved students if they're in your community, but we understand that not all school districts are going to be serving underserved students. We also want to make sure that we're understanding what learners really gain from your program. So who is earning, what percentage of learners are earning things like dual credit, AP credit, what kind of industry certifications they're getting that are recognized by industry, how many are graduating from high school, and again, that should be the percentage of eligible high school graduates. So, of course, a freshman would not be eligible, so don't include them in your percentages. It'd just be the kind of the seniors or the last level of your post-secondary program. And then, if you're able to, who enrolled in post-secondary education and or the military. And the numbers are similar the categories are similar for post-secondary, so who kind of gained that certification or diploma at the end of your post-secondary program, and then who kind of went to a career right afterwards in that area. So the data section is where a lot of programs fall down. So if you have questions on this, I understand that it is complicated, but I'm happy to answer them kind of on this webinar, or we can kind of hop on a call, but we want to make sure that you have those data pieces. If you're not able to get your post-secondary data or your K-12 data, depending on what kind of program you're applying for, please explain that in below the graph, below this table. We want to understand why you weren't able to get that data. It's not necessarily disqualifying if you don't have both sets of data, but if you can explain why you don't have both sets of data, that would be much appreciated. We also have kind of a larger focus at Advance CTE generally on this issue around equity and access in CTE. We know that CTE has kind of a troubled past in terms of really pushing students with disabilities and minority students and lower income students into CTE programs that didn't serve them well. And we've come such a long way in the last couple of decades in terms of creating these amazing programs of study. And we want to make sure that all learners really have options and opportunities to take part of these programs. So you'll see in question 12 and 13 that we've added this kind of focus on equity and access. I will say a couple of applications last year, I wouldn't phone it in here. If you do something to serve underserved communities, then that's an area that I would spend a good amount of time on. So in question 12, it's how does your school or institution ensure equitable access for learners with diverse backgrounds? In question 13, how do you make sure those from diverse backgrounds are being served, and what supports do you offer them? So that may go beyond your program of study. It may be something that your school or your institution does, but I would encourage you to spend some time on this area if your program or if your school has supports. Another thing I really wanted to drive home is partnerships. You have two sections, really three sections to focus on partnerships. The first one is education, and so if you're a high school program, then really showing us how you're either working with other high school or those post-secondary partners, and so what is the pathway that students have from middle school to high school to post-secondary. And then for business and industry, we want to better understand kind of that alignment to the needs in your community. So was your program started as a result of business and industry need? If not, that's fine. But if it was, you have a real story to tell there. What's the labor market data that you use to find that out? Was it developed in partnership with business and industry? Do they help you write curriculum, and do they help deliver those work-based learning experiences? So this is another section where I encourage you not to kind of phone it in. We want to understand how these groups are true partners in your program. So serving on an advisory committee is great, but what do they do as part of that advisory committee? And how long has that partnership been sustained? And so I think spending extra time on this area is also well recommended. We also have a kind of bonus section for community partnerships or nonprofits. You don't have to fill out this. This is just kind of for extra points, but it is kind of where we're able to draw some of those inspiring stories from. And so you'll hear from Robert and Sharon a little bit on kind of what made their program unique, and a lot of that comes out in this kind of community partnerships piece as well. Another piece that I would hope that you focus on is this course sequence section. Like I said, we want to really honor true programs of study, so those that span both secondary and post-secondary. And this is a great way for you to demonstrate how that actually happens. And so filling out grade 9 through 16, if it goes that far, would be ideal. And explaining how those kind of transition courses apply specifically would be great. We know that a lot of schools and districts have their own chart for this, so you don't have to use this chart. You can use your own one if you have something else, but we do need to clearly understand how you're making sure that learners are set up for success from secondary to post-secondary education. And like I said, we have, we get tons of applications every year, and it's really, really difficult to choose just one per career cluster. And so some kind of tips I would give you when you're filling out your application is kind of helping us understand what makes your program stand out. And these are a couple of things that really help do that for us. First is student testimonials, hearing from students and parents, whether it's through kind of letters of support or just a couple of quotes that you have. It's fantastic. We love that. Also, lifting up those student stories. We know that a lot of you have already been in the media quite a bit, and so if you have those stories that have been in the press or on the local television station, or you just feature them on your website, helping to include that so we kind of see what the face of your program looks like through the learner view would be fantastic. Also, kind of service-oriented projects. We know so much of you guys do so much in your community to really help support your community, and so helping us understand how your program does that would be fantastic. And then we love CTSOs, Career Technical Student Organizations. They're fantastic partners for us, of ours, and so we want to make sure we understand if your program of study has this alignment with the CTSO, whether it's through competitions or whatever it may be, that you spend some good amount of time on that as well, because we love to hear about kind of that level of engagement. So I have a couple of questions here before we kind of go to the next presentation, but if you have any questions, feel free to write them in the chat box. We have a question that says, if we're looking at a program of study that spans 5 high schools, all equally successful, can we apply as a district? Yes, we have had districts apply. I think it probably makes more sense if you just choose one of the high schools and then explain in your application that this actually has 5 sending high schools. But I'm happy, Susan, if you want to hop on a call or shoot me an email to explain this further. It's going to be a little bit tougher to apply as a district, though we have had districts apply in the past. So let's just kind of discuss that offline if that works. And if there are any other questions, feel free. Let me just make sure there are none. All right, great. So if you think of any while Sharon and Robert are presenting, feel free to write them in the chat box. But for now, I'm so excited to hand it over to them. Our goal of having this presentation is not only to help showcase a fantastic program of study, but they're a great example of what we're really looking for in an award-winning program. So they're going to give you some background on what makes their program so unique. And if you have any questions about, tips for filling out the application or whatever, feel free to write those in the chat box, and they can certainly field them as well. So Sharon, I'm going to hand it over to you guys.
All right, we're going to start by apologizing. We are in the middle of our school day, so you will hear bells, you will hear announcements. Hopefully they stay to a minimum. So we are from Dauphin County Technical School, which is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and serve the county of Dauphin County. Our names are Bob Brightbill and Sharon Dialing, and our contact information is in the slideshow. If you have any reason to get to us, you are more than welcome to send us emails. I'm going to let you take this quote.
Well, obviously you can read. So this quote is one that I found we were working on the application. The application was a team effort, that's for sure. Our director got it started, and Mr. Dowling and I also participated. And one of the most
Hey, Sharon, I don't think we can hear Robert.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about now?
There you go.
Okay. One of the things about the application process that was not really a challenge, but it was an eye-opener for us, was that we had a lot of discussion about what we were putting into the application. Were we talking about the whole school in this area? Or were we talking about my building construction program? Or were we talking about the building construction cares program? So that was something that we had to really, really keep in mind as we were taking care of the application process. And I just took down a note when you were talking, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. But, obviously, the quote there is that learning is most noble when it is used to benefit others. And I don't have any idea who David Nyball is, but I think that quote is really, really meaningful to me and the program that Sharon and I have created, which is Building Construction Cares, where we use our students' career and technical skills to go out into the world and help people that have suffered from natural disasters. So, what brought us here today, the history of Dauphin County Technical School is Pennsylvania had a statewide initiative around 1968, 1969 to create a career and technical center in every county of the state of Pennsylvania. So our school opened in 1970 after being in business over at one of our sending schools for 2 years. I started teaching here in 2002. My program when I started was kind of floundering. We had an instructor that had kind of retired a little bit before he actually retired. So I had about 12 students when I first started. So that was a major difficulty that I had to get over right away. But within the first 2 years, our enrollment was at full enrollment in my program. We did have a change of delivery system in 2006 that was kind of the impetus of starting Building Construction Cares. Before that, our delivery system was a week about program. So I would have a group of students in my program all day, every day, for 5 days. And then they would swap with a group of students that had just spent 5 days in their academic program. And while it was really, really beneficial for my career and tech program in that I could take my students out on a job site and we could work outside on a job outside of our building all day long for a whole week, it wasn't conducive to the academic learning. Math is something that you need to have every day. And so our school realized this, and we made a delivery system change to a half-day program in 2006. The only growing pain I had from that is that I missed the opportunity to take my students out on real-world construction projects. And so one day over lunch, my principal and I were talking, and I said, what if I took my kids down to Mississippi to help rebuild after Katrina? And that was the birth of Building Construction Cares, because she looked at me and said, that could be a good idea. She said, put something together for me. So that's how we started. And within about 3 or 4 months, I had a group of, I think we took 14 students the first year down to Mississippi for a 10-day trip. So, and then Mrs. Dialing joined the Building Construction Cares group in 2009, and she took something that was really, really rough and very organic, and she helped me create it into the program that it is today, which is not rough at all, and is much more organized, and that's what made it over the top.
I think one of the things you need to understand about our school, we are a comprehensive technical school.
Hey, Sharon, we can't hear you.
Okay, we are a comprehensive technical school, and always have been. Which means that our students do take their academics here at school, and they are not sent back to their sending schools for that purpose. We are one of 14 comprehensive technical schools in the state of Pennsylvania.
So my program has a lot of success stories.
Hey, Robert, you keep cutting in and out.
So my program has a lot of success stories. And I listed a few of them here, and I listed the students' names because they don't mind me sharing. My success stories are stories of kids that, like Sam Westner, for instance, the first kid that's on the list. He was a 4-year student of mine. I started in 2002. Oh, excuse me. So Tim was in my first graduating class, and his senior year of high school, he started a business called Dauphin Enterprises, and he has just gone over the top with his business. He's also instrumental in that he traveled with me on the first 5 or 6 Building Construction Cares trips as a contractor. He would come along with his crew to help with the construction of the projects that we did, which was really beneficial for me. Plus, he's also a huge financial help to my program in that he sponsors senior awards every year, including his senior year of high school. He sponsored a senior award for one of his classmates. So he's just an outstanding, outstanding young man. And I would love to take credit for all of the things that he's achieved, but I can hardly take credit for any of them because he comes from an outstanding family. Shane Jank is another success story. He traveled with me on the first trip down to Mississippi. I believe he came along the second trip to Mississippi. He works for a company called Pyramid Construction. He worked there as a co-op student. They're a partner of mine, an OAC member, and they hired him as a co-op student, and he's been working there ever since. Right now, he's a superintendent for them. He graduated in 2008, so less than 10 years after graduating from high school, he's a superintendent of a very large commercial contracting company. And right now, they're putting another floor on the Milton Hershey Hospital, the children's wing, which is probably a $40 or $50 million project, and Shane is one of the superintendents on that project. Billy Poole, he participated in several trips. I would think that Billy was on 2, possibly 3 trips with me. The day after he graduated from high school, he went to work for a contractor from our area, Remco, which was his co-op job. His starting salary the day after high school graduation was higher than my starting salary. Well, not my starting salary, my current salary in 2013. Billy's now 22 years old and just bought his first house and property. John Watson and John Williamson both attended one trip with me at the end of their senior year. They both got a job with a roofing company. Their starting hourly rate outside of but the day after they graduated from high school was $36 an hour. I've been here for 18 years. They make more money than I do. So those are the success stories of my program, but also Building Construction Cares. There's students that had those experiences and built those relationships with our OAC members and our community partners and ran with those opportunities. And there's a list of some of the more important community partners that we've had. Dauphin Enterprises, LLC is the company that the 2006 graduate Sam Wessner owns and runs. Don Updegrave Construction Company. Don Updegrave and I were friends for 20 years, and his construction company has been a huge sponsor of our program. He helps me with the NOCTI testing every year. He's come along with me on several out-of-state trips several times. Anytime I need something, he's there. AP Williams, another huge contractor in the area that is really invested in career and technical education, providing jobs for my students, providing job shadows, providing mentorship, and also funding for scholarships for seniors. So those are a few of my industry partners.
Now, we would like to focus a little bit on Building Construction Cares, which is our...
Hey, Sharon, we can't hear you.
Of course.
There we go.
Now we would like to focus a little on the Building Construction Cares, which is our community service organization. Basically, once or twice a year, sometimes we do it twice, we take a week and take students to either new construction or restoration, usually after a major disaster, and we're providing disaster relief. Bob's already hinted at some of the things that we do get out of it and our students do get out of it. They do get a chance to refine their construction skills, and they get the opportunity to learn about serving others. We have been at least once, and in some cases several times, to each one of these locations across the eastern United States. We are, I think, at eight states and counting. And one of the things that we do whenever we do these trips is we ask our students to keep a journal of their experiences. We do that for a number of reasons. We realize that our students, well, first of all, we're integrating some writing into this organization, partially because we are taking them out for a week of school and their teachers want to see what these kids are doing. The students are keeping these journals so that they can reflect back on them. They've told us that the students who have gone a second and third year, understand how important it is to take a look back on what they did, and where they've been. And then we take quotes out of them and we use them to do sometimes speaking engagements. That's part of our fundraising in terms of making sure that this organization can continue. It was one of the important things our Joint Operating Committee, our school board, really does not want to take on the funding for this. And so we raise all of our own funds. And one of the ways you can do that is you can speak to community service organizations, and they will often make a donation to your group. The quotes that you're going to see in the next several slides are some things that our kids have written in their journals.
So there you can see a few of the projects that we've done, but most importantly, I think, is the quote here. These kids, the students that we have in our school, don't necessarily have an awful lot. And that was one of the things I kind of struggled with, because it's one of those things I felt that I really needed to be cognitive of is, you know, a lot of the kids are coming from really, really needy backgrounds, and they were working on houses that probably weren't much different than their houses. And what I learned was that these kids just totally appreciated the opportunity to really help others, and to, they really appreciated the thankfulness that the people had. We have done in the past local Habitat for Humanity projects and other local things like that to help people that were in poverty. But it kind of led me to want to do disaster relief, because what disaster relief allows is it's a great equalizer. We have worked on houses that were really, really nice upper middle class houses. We've worked on houses that were really, really sad and really weren't something that anybody would want to live in. And we've helped people of all socioeconomic backgrounds. And the one thing they all had in common was how thankful they were to get help after something affected their house, such as flooding or hurricanes or whatever the storm was. In this pictures on the far left, you can see that was a community-based project. That was where we put together a playground for a community that lost their playground in flooding. You know, the picture in the middle is one of our other instructors, our carpentry instructor, Mr. Carroll, that travels with us a lot and helps us with projects. They're putting new windows in a house that came through Superstorm Sandy. The other picture up above in the upper right corner was in Biloxi, Mississippi, when we were framing a house. And I believe the lower right picture was also from Mississippi, where we were doing some framing on houses. So that's one of the benefits from our students, is that our students really get the chance to experience true gratitude from people that didn't have any other resources other than the organizations that were coming in to help them out.
One of the things that you're going to see in this picture is some of these female students. Some of them are building construction students, but some of them are not. Some of them, the two young ladies in the lower right-hand corner, they're both cosmetology students. There were a few years where our enrollment of our school dipped, which meant that the enrollment in some of our programs also dipped. And we didn't necessarily have a full group of students who were construction-related or from construction-related careers. So we opened up our program for a couple of years to the entire school. We have been able to service students in about 17 different programs in our school. And the interesting thing is some of the work, like for instance, those cosmetology students, they did some of the nicest drywall we've ever seen. The four young ladies in front of the shed, none of those are building construction students. And most of the students working with the installation were also not building construction students. A few of those are. It has been wonderful watching kids work on projects that they would have never gotten a chance to while they are here in the building.
So, you know, there again, I am so glad to be able to impact this family's life in such a positive way from the spring of 2011. That is overall the theme that we get from the kids. one of the first things I say to the kids is I warn them, that we're going to go work on this house, this family's largest investment, and we're going to show up with 16 kids from high school. And I urge them to really consider what that family is going to feel like if you have 16 kids rolling up on their house to work on their house for the day. You know, are they going to trust the kids? That, you know, how they carry themselves, how they present themselves, how they interact with the family is extremely important in earning that family's trust. And as far as I know, we've never left a family down. One of the things that we end up doing an awful lot of after hurricanes is an awful lot of roofing work to be done. So one of the things that we do an awful lot of is roofing. There's 3 different roofing jobs from 3 different trips. The one in the back left was in West Virginia. That was probably the toughest job that we've ever tackled, just because of the height and the steepness of that roof and the materials that were on it originally. But we were able to knock it out within a week. But and pictures, like I said, it in the bottom were, you know, that was a week where we did 5 total complete tear-offs and replacements in 1 week. So upper right corner, that was framing the walls. We framed the whole house in Biloxi, Mississippi that year, and that was the walls going up on that house that we were framing. So.
Once again, we don't do this without the help of other people. You see that some of the companies that we've already talked about are here. They sponsor us not only in their services, but they generally make donations for us. One of the other places we sometimes get funding is through our local Rotary and through our local Lions clubs. And we actually have some staff members. We actually have a consultant with our school who often goes with us, and she works for that Keystone Human Services, and she ends up taking a week's vacation, and they allow her to, so that she can join us and give us some support with our kids. Because sometimes some of the things that kids experience are very difficult, and there's some emotional issues that we need to deal with, and we always enjoy having our Ms. Kennedy with us, because she really helps us out with some of those issues. And this slide, we decided to talk about building construction cares by the numbers. We've done 14 trips so far. We've taken 132 different students. I was wrong, it was only 7 states so far. We've worked with 40 projects or families. Those are the round trip miles. That does not include the miles within a community that we are traveling. Sometimes the work site is 30 miles from where we are staying, and so we have to figure those kinds of things in, but altogether, everything has been 100% awesome. And that's the end of our presentation.
Great, thank you both so much. And I think this is a great example of, you know, their program, Dauphin School. It didn't only have kind of a great narrative, it answered all the questions, it had the great data, but this was, you know, their nonprofit is something that kind of went the extra mile, and is a great story for them to tell, but also a great story for us to tell at the national level. I certainly don't expect every program of study that applies to have something this robust, but I know that so many of you are doing such fantastic things in your community that if you can kind of show how your program is impacting your community and impacting those learners' life experiences, that's a great kind of extra mile to take. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to write them right in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. But I wanted to ask you both, is there any kind of tips that you would give those that are on our webinar right now in terms of filling out the application? Was there anything that you kind of struggled with or wished you'd had done differently? It's great to give some of that insight.
We both thought the same thing at first. Don't try to fill it out on your own. You need some help. It was 3 of us working together to come up with ideas. So if you have more than one person who understands the program and understands what's going on, that's best. We found a lot of the things that we could fulfill for building construction technology that were true of our entire school. So it was really nice to be able to say, since our school is doing this, which benefits, say, diverse learners, then certainly the diverse learners in building construction technology are able to take advantage of it.
Great. If there are any other questions, feel free to write them in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. All right, well, it doesn't look like we have any more. If you end up having any more questions, feel free to write us at awards@careertech.org or my email address, kfitzgerald@careertech.org. I want to thank both Sharon and Robert so much for joining today. We've had a couple of comments in the chat box that say that these student success stories are great, and it is so great to hear them. We're just so impressed with your work and so honored to feature you all throughout the year. So thank you for kind of sharing your story and giving those tips. I also want to let those on the call know that we have a couple of different webinars coming up that may or may not be of interest to you. One, we've been doing a communication series on how to communicate effectively about your programs of study, both at the state level and the local level, and we'll have one on December 12th on using social media in your advocacy efforts. And then we'll also have another one, which the date is to be decided, on kind of how to communicate about CTE after the election. So this is probably more geared towards state level folks, but you know, if you're having to kind of make the case for CTE in your community with new policymakers that may not know the benefits of CTE, then this would be a great webinar for you. If your colleagues weren't able to join this one, like I said earlier, we have been recording this. I'm sorry for a little bit of the sound issues, but I hope that you all could get them. And it'll be put on YouTube by the end of the day. We did have another question. So it says, is this meant for an individual career cluster program or a whole CTE unit? So this is meant for a CTE program of study within a career cluster. So if you've got kind of an architecture program, then you would be in the architecture and construction career cluster. So it doesn't have to be all the parts of that career cluster have to be represented. It's just a program within that career cluster. You just have to select one program of study. But it should span high school and post-secondary education if possible. I hope that answers your question. Oh, and then let me see if there's any other last minute questions. Feel free to write them in the chat box. And then here is a slide with a little bit more information about those webinars that I was just speaking about. All right, well, if there's no other questions, thank you both, Sharon and Robert, for joining us. This was great, and I will be happy to answer any questions offline if you've had to kind of think of anything after this webinar. Again, my email address is kfitzgerald@careertech.org. If you go to the landing page for the awards, you can also see the email address we have specifically for awards is awards@careertech.org. And we're so excited to read all of your applications. And just once again, thank you both, Sharon and Robert. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.